are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Hello and welcome to Focus on Germantown. I'm Mayor Mike Palazzolo. It's my privilege each month to host this show, offering conversation and comment about our city government and how it provides services and works with you, our citizens. This month's show will be dedicated solely to exploring and explaining the Germantown Road Realignment. Joining me to discuss this project is City Administrator Patrick Lawton, and joining us later is Germantown City Engineer Tim Gwaltney. Welcome to the show today, Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor.
This is an interesting, it's great to have you. This is an interesting project that a lot of people are very familiar with. Can you tell us a little history about the road realignment?
There is history with it. It actually goes back to a term that this city coined back in the early 90s. We didn't coin it, but we began to reference the term sustainability. And when you look at a city like Germantown, where we are essentially landlocked, we don't have a lot of options in terms of how we grow. And so we looked at the concept of focusing on what we call the triple bottom line. How does a community in our situation grow in terms of its economic, environmental, and social sustainability? A lot of the work that our current 2030 planning committee is doing today is focused on just that. So moving forward into 2004, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen appointed a steering committee at that time to work on the current 2020 plan. So we've been discussing this type of activity for a period of time. And one of the things that came out of this citizen-driven grassroots effort, the 2020 plan, was the concept of how could we create a downtown, a central business district, where people could live, work, and play. In fact, the term that was coined coming out of that was, let's redevelop the heart of Germantown. And that led way to other concepts in terms of smart growth and new urbanism and those types of planning efforts.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on smart growth? A lot of people have heard of the concept. You mentioned we really went through this exercise almost 10 years ago. Can you give our audience a little bit of idea, what does smart growth mean to a Germantown resident?
Well, just again, a little more history on it. The smart growth concept coming out of the 2020 plan that was adopted, we worked on the smart growth concept itself through a 7-day charrette process where we had folks from the community coming in and talking about the possibility of our downtown. Again, because Germantown can't annex and add more land, we had to look at ways that we can go up. And that's what smart growth essentially is looking at the existing land use patterns in our central business district and determining how we can maximize that footprint. So what it calls for is greater densities in our downtown area, mixed use developments, and mixed use being things such as office and retail and residential coexisting on the same parcel of land, where for example, you could have retail down below and residential apartments above, creating this town center concept. The greater densities is critical for this because, again, we can go up, we can't go out, and in the process also building a more financially sustainable Germantown by maximizing the footprint of the land that we have to work with.
I know that when we talk about the Germantown Road Realignment, it falls into a greater strategy as it relates to improving roads in our city, doing something called complete streets. You mentioned smart growth. Lots of smart growth brings buildings closer to the street and develops something called sense of place. Can you kind of share with our audience what does sense of place mean?
Sense of place, placemaking is creating an area where, again, people want to live, work, and play and visit. It's hard to put your finger on. It's like anything else, but you know it when you're there. It attracts you to this particular place. You're right, Mayor, about bringing the buildings closer to the street and creating this massing Some of us grew up in older towns where you saw that type of smart growth. We didn't call it then at that point. But the key to make smart growth work is land use patterns, the land use in the smart growth area, and transportation have to work in harmony. They have to one supports the other. You can't create these wonderful walkable places and spaces without a great connectivity plan and a road network that invites you to do that. Not only you in an automobile, but you on your bicycle or walking from place to place. Land use and transportation have to go hand in hand in order for smart growth to be effective.
And we know that our city is bisected by two highways, Highway 72 and State Route 177, plus a major railway as well. The concept of doing road improvement is not new to Germantown. We've seen Germantown Road widened on the south side of town recently, and now we're doing work on the north side of town at Wolf River and Germantown intersection. And the road realignment is in the center of the city. How will that help with connectivity?
Well, the way Germantown has developed over time, and to no one's fault, but what you have is these large super blocks in our central business district, classic suburban type sprawl that developed separated by a sea of parking lots and very difficult to get from point A to point B in our downtown district. You can, but along major roads such as Germantown Road and Poplar Avenue, that not only serve as the commuter traffic through town, but they also service the local traffic. So it creates a lot of traffic congestion in our central business district. The complete street plan as a component of smart growth will take some of these larger super blocks, we call them, and where appropriate, begin to bisect them. In addition to that, when you're moving the traffic onto some of the larger thoroughfares like Germantown Road, a major north-south connector in our community, you're able then to focus on those other streets throughout our community, like West Street, for example, and make it much more pedestrian friendly and provide for alternative routes through the central business district, as well as alternative modes of transportation. Again, on your feet, on your bicycle, in a vehicle as well.
Well, and we have time for one more question in this segment. We do know that the concept of smart growth has made its way through our community. In 2007, this road was, in essence, approved. What kind of stopped it then?
Well, the recession happened, the failure in the economy. We had planned to move forward with the project, and you're right, it goes back at least that far. We tightened our belts at City Hall on a number of projects to withstand the recession, and we did very well. But now the project is coming back, again, because we have other funding opportunities made available to make this project happen.
It's a very important project, so we're going to have you back for another segment. We have to take a short break. When we come back, we will further delve into the reasons this project is important to our city.
This new mom is struggling to get the skates just right. And now she's holding on for dear life. Her kids can see she may have broke her knees. They still love her though she looks like she's attacked by killer bees. I'm allergic. Proof you don't have to be perfect to be the perfect parent.
Thousands of siblings in foster care will take you just as you are.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back to Focus on Germantown. We are back with Germantown City Administrator Patrick Lawton to discuss more about the Germantown Road Realignment. Patrick, just picking up on our conversation from the prior segment, one of the things that our city and our residents are very proud of is that we constantly put major emphasis on public safety in our city, whether that's police, fire, ambulance. our city always rates either number 1 or number 2 in the state with regards to crime and being well protected by our police department. Some folks in our community have raised the question that this road realignment might make us not as safe as we're accustomed to. Can you help us understand that a little bit?
Let's begin from the police department side, Mayor. There are no correlations between this type of road realignment or the efficient movement of traffic through a community and a direct tie to an increase in crime. As you mentioned, Germantown has had one of the lowest crime rates in the state. It is a strategic objective, I know, of this administration and this Board of Mayor and Aldermen to make sure that we stay that way. And in conversations with Chief Hall and his personnel, there is a continued emphasis on public safety in preventing crime and in solving crime. And this year, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved the staffing of a 7th police district. That is 7 new police officers on the street. We hired 3 recently with the adoption of the FY16 budget. We have 4 more planned in next fiscal year. And I know you and I have had conversations about let's not wait until July 1. Let's move forward with the recruitment process and bring those officers on now. So everything that we've done in terms of maintaining that low crime rate and being diligent and proactive will continue. And there's nothing to indicate that there will be an increase in crime with the efficient movement of traffic. The district also allows us to, because we're focusing these 7 new officers in the central business district, to make sure that we don't deplete our resources in our neighborhoods, that we have active patrol, that we're vigilant throughout the entire community. So there's not a correlation between the road realignment and crime. Now, from the fire department side, in conversations with Chief Selberg, anytime you can improve the efficient flow of traffic and be able to move emergency medical service vehicles, fire trucks through those intersections without endangering, because they're large apparatus moving through there, the general public, or be able to move people quickly, say, to Methodist Hospital from the south, that is an advantage, and that should enhance our public safety. One other comment about public safety, the fact that we are realigning that road in the near future, from an engineering standpoint, anytime you can take a lot of the twists and turns out of an area where you have congestion and maybe not the most efficient flow of traffic, you're automatically going to be cutting down on the number of accidents. So traffic will be moving smoothly through that area. The final thing, with this realignment, we're also going to be able to add crossing gates at the railroad crossings. Believe it or not, at Poplar and West, the railroad crossing there, all you have is bells and whistles. There is no arm that comes down. This realignment will be able to add that additional, or those 2 arms to protect the traveling public.
So it'd be safe to say, in the amount of research and discussion with our public safety professionals, that this road realignment will actually be more conducive to a safer city. It's pretty safe, not even an assumption, it's pretty much fact.
It will handle that, particularly in those 3 areas: engineering, police, and fire.
And we leave out ambulance at times. We've started our own ambulance service a few years ago, and that is something that also the other third part of public safety as well. Talking a little bit more about the road realignment, we do have a number of events coming up that will engage our citizenry even greater than they already have been. There's a town hall meeting scheduled for December the 2nd at the Great Hall and Conference Center. That town hall meeting, we will invite, maybe you can share, we'll invite everyone who's watching today, but tell us a little bit more about that meeting.
Well, we're holding a town hall meeting because when we had a retreat earlier this year with the mayor and the board expressly said we need to make sure that we go beyond the typical public hearing and let's have a conversation with the public about this roadway, because there is a lot of conversation about it. Public hearings are not the best way to get public input. It's one-sided. It's citizens voicing support or opposition for a project. What we want to do with the town hall meeting is actually have a dialogue with our residents. This email and letters that we're going to send out here by the end of this week will go to easily 2,000 plus people. In addition, we'll have it on your show and then in the local newspapers advertising it. And the way we're going to do it, we're going to inform the public about the project, and then we're going to ask them to consider the possibility of this road realignment. and then discuss with us the pros and cons of the road realignment. Because I think the community is probably split on this road, but if they come back and they talk about, here's the possibility, this is what could happen, this is what's good, this is what's bad. The other unique setting about the town hall meeting we're going to have after we provide the information is our residents are going to be sitting at round tables in groups of either 8 or 10. They're going to get to know each other first because they may not know their neighbors across town, and then they're going to have a conversation about considering the possibility of the road realignment, list the pros and the cons, and then report out to the mayor and the board and the rest of their neighbors present at that meeting. It's a unique way to gather citizen input and engage our community in a very meaningful way.
Well, without a doubt, I think one of the things that we can rest as a hallmark in Germantown is having an engaged community. You know, spirited conversation is healthy for a community as long as it's done with great decorum and politeness, and our people do that here in Germantown. Just a couple, we have time for one more question before our next segment. With everything that we have mentioned, we failed to mention some streetscaping and some other things that we're going to do in Germantown. You really only have about 30 seconds, but there are other things being planned excluding just a road realignment.
Streetscape plan, Mayor, was included in this year's budget, something you and I talked about over a year ago to make sure that we had that in the plan so we can create uniformity and beautify our central business district, whether it's street lighting, sidewalk improvements, public art, all throughout the central business district. We hope to begin the implementation and the funding July 1 of 2016.
Thank you, Patrick. We have to take another quick break. Joining us when we return will be Tim Gwaltney, Germantown City Engineer, to discuss the logistics of the Germantown Road Realignment. Back in a moment.
Right, mi cariño. So like I said, everything I learned about cooking, I learned from Grandma's empanadas. Shall we go again?
Yep.
Mix the beef with the onions with the peppers with the paprika with the garlic with the oregano with the cumin. Got it?
Got it.
Throw on the olives, stir, season, stir again, pour out the flour, roll out the dough, make a circle, drop in a fistful of filling, fold over, press down, and ta-da!
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
Which planet are we living on? Right here.
What do you think it would be like to teach? Chances are, you have no idea. Teachers today are breaking down obstacles, finding innovative ways to instill old lessons, proving that greatness can be found in everyday places, and that you don't need to be famous to be unforgettable. That's what it's like to teach.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. Joining us today is City Administrator Patrick Lawton and Germantown City Engineer Tim Gwaltney. As City Engineer, Tim is here to discuss the logistics aspects of the Germantown Road Realignment. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, we've talked exclusively with Patrick about the road realignment. Can you kind of tell us where we are with the project right now?
Yes, currently we are finishing up the first phase of a 4-phase project life cycle, the first phase being the environmental phase. The environmental phase entails engineering assessments of wetland areas, of whether there's any endangered species, contaminated soils, that type of study. Many agencies are involved in the review of those studies too, being the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Army Corps of Engineers. We compiled the information, sent that information to those agencies, have got their concurrence that there were basically no environmental impacts to be concerned with. And reasoning for that is the existing area for this project is a developed area. There was already development in the area. It's not like we were building a roadway in a virgin area similar to Wolf River Boulevard, meaning that area was much more environmentally sensitive than where we are now.
So the test results came back that we had no environmental impact. Can you tell us what is the next phase since we've gone through the environmental?
Yes, the next phase is the final design phase. That entails just what it says, finalizing the preliminary plans into a final set of construction drawings in an effort to put the project out for bids. Before the project goes out for bids, we will go to the right-of-way acquisition phase, then put the project out for bids, which is considered the construction phase.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Mayor, I was going to add that in terms of the budgeting process, we have funds allocated in FY16 to do that final design phase work. We'll be bringing that to the board sometime early spring of 2016.
You know, many people have asked him, what is the approximate timeline? And I know it's hard to, don't want to put you on the spot because a lot of this is not, quote, gone out the door for bid yet, but just generally give our audience about the time frame.
Sure. We anticipate completing the environmental phase by January of 16, then moving into the final design phase, which should be completed by the end of 2016. We would then move into the right-of-way acquisition phase from pretty much all of calendar year 2017, then move into the construction phase in 2018. Construction is expected to take about a year to a year and a half, which would put us toward the end of 2019.
Thank you. I know a lot of people think that this is a project that's 30 days away, but it is much lengthier than that, more like 3+ years away. A lot of people have been concerned with access to businesses, whether it be on West Street or on Germantown Road, and the residents around there that may be impacted during the project. What will we do to help mitigate that impact?
Very good question, Mayor. And yes, we're very cognizant of the existing businesses in that area, very cognizant of the impacts that this construction could have to those businesses in the area. We will have meetings with not only the business owners in that area, but when the time comes, the construction contractor as well, to fully make sure that the contractor understands that access to those businesses must be maintained at all times. I mean, there will be short-term impacts, but believe me, we understand the importance of keeping those accesses open.
Mayor, if I could add, one of the things that will assist in that endeavor is the city will be managing the project. Unlike what happened on Poplar Avenue several years ago when we had all that work being done, TDOT managed that. But I think with local control at our level, with Mr. Gwaltney on top of the project, we'll be able to address those access issues in a much more responsible manner or responsive manner than what we've seen before, because we're concerned about that as well. We want to make sure that there's no lost revenue as a result of this project.
You mentioned the road work done on Poplar near Germantown Road, the expansion of Poplar. As a baseline, who managed the project, the Wolf River project?
City of Germantown.
Okay, and we know that finished early and under budget, so we do have kind of a track record of managing projects well.
And a lot of credit goes to the man to my right here in terms of managing that project.
You know, the cost, we often talk about cost in a project. A few years back, when this was looked at in '07, the city was willing to, quote unquote, foot the bill for the entire project. This time around, Tim, what is the funding formula that the city will have to look at?
Yes, 90% of the project expenditures are reimbursable. That breaks out into 80% federal, 10% state, and the city will be responsible for 10% also.
So much more cost efficient. I know that in our Board of Mayor and Alderman work session, a few of our aldermen had the willingness to want to even maybe invest further in this project, to look at maybe doing some incentive-based contracting so that work can be done either quicker or maybe at night and have less impact on the commuter traffic, residential traffic, the businesses, and the residents nearby. I'm not asking this question, I'm just making that as more of a comment. So we're looking at that as well.
Oh, absolutely. We'll work with our procurement department and examine ways that we can incorporate those types of incentives, Mayor, as you'd mentioned, into into the bid documents.
We're a little early in this process. We do have a couple of business owners that will be displaced, of which some of those, one property is a mid-1970s strip center, commercial center that has 5 or 6 tenants. Since this is a federal program, there are programs that we can look into to help with the transition for those business tenants. We're not there yet, but can you at least let the public know what we have in front of us?
Yes, Mayor, and you are correct that once we get to the right-of-way phase, the appraisals of the property will be done. The businesses will also, the existing businesses in that building, each one will be looked at on a case-by-case basis to determine what their relocation costs are, what's eligible, and those discussions will be taking place at that time. But yes, that is part of the federal right-of-way acquisition phase.
We've got time for one more question. I'll direct this to Patrick. You know, it's very exciting. On this road project, we actually gain almost an acre of green space. What can we do with that as a community?
Well, there's a number of things, Mayor, we could do. Certainly, it'll be grass, but we could landscape that area. It might be a place for public art. Working with our Parks Department, they may be able to incorporate what's called a pocket park in that area. As we're talking about connectivity and walkability in our community, those might be some nice areas for people to just land as they're making their way up West Street, say, into Old Germantown.
Great information. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Patrick. I think the citizens have learned much about this road realignment project. I'd like to thank both of my guests, Patrick Lawton and Tim Gwaltney, for being here on the show today, and thank those watching at home as well. If you'd like more information on the Germantown Road Realignment, I invite you to visit our website at germantown-tn.gov/road realignment. If you'd like more information about this or any other show on Germantown Municipal Television, please visit www.gmtvonline.org. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you when Focus on Germantown returns next month.